Or Bruce would love it if you went to thesandingglove.com and bought one of these, the sanding solution. Now, this is a self-powered, what do they call it? Inertia. It depends on where this thing touches the wood and the angle you've got this head at. And I suck at it. I'm really bad with it. But I'm going to attempt to do it a little bit tonight. But this thing, it's got an articulating head. You loosen a set screw. You can get up underneath tight rims on the top. It'll go in a lot of neat places. And it's stout and heavy and knurled, so after your 4th hour of sanding the inside of a hollow form, you'll be glad to do something substantial. For finer sanding, this is non-woven sanding pads. They come in different grits. The color indicates the grit. This is woven steel wool. You have to be careful with this stuff. Some people will tell you that this steel wool doesn't come off like it does if you've got the regular Brillo type pads of sanding steel wool. But these hairs, these fibers will get in your wood and they will stain it. This is Abranet. This has the backing. You need a special pad to put on between this and your drill, but this stuff has holes in it, so it lets the sanding dust come through a lot better. This stuff works really well with cut greenwood. It doesn't clog up as bad, and then you just stick it in a bucket of water, rinse it out, and go back to sanding. And it also comes in different grades. You got your traditional rolls. I've got 5 rolls hanging on a rod beside my lathe, so I can just tear off whatever grit I need. And the 80 grit, I'm proud to say, doesn't get changed out very often anymore. It used to get changed out more often than all the rest. And then it comes in different grits, and I can just use my, well, I've got some those scissors you get for $2 at Harbor Freight, and I use them to cut. Huh?
Hemostats.
Scissors.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were talking about someone else.
To cut this with, I keep the scissors there, and they won't cut paper, but they'll cut sandpaper really well. Then, of course, you've got your sanding discs. Close your eyes. These are Klingspor, the little wishbone in the back. But these are Velcro, and they come in all the different grits. Now, the thing to be careful with these is they will build up heat. If you build up too much heat, they'll melt all the little the grippers on the Velcro pad. Ask me how I know. And then you have these little things flying across your shop all the time. The sanding pads come in, I'll use this one, in sizes from 1 inch to 3 inch in the normal, then you can go 5 inch and larger. This one is really good for doing deep inside and getting that little nib on the bottom that I'm probably the only one in the room that ever gets a little pimple in the bottom, right? Nobody else ever leaves one? Yeah. That little thing will be focused and it'll help sand it down. Put this on the end of that drill extension. Now that's a firm, that white stuff is pretty firm. There's not much give to it. These pads are soft rubber, so when you're turning a convoluted piece, or a piece if you're trying not to build up much friction and change the shape, these are the better kind of pad for that. And they come beveled on the sides or square. You can get the sanding disc cut in Abranet. 1 inch. You've got wet and dry sandpaper. I don't do much wet sanding, but I've got it for finishes. If I've got a lot of coats of lacquer on there, I'll use the wet and dry sandpaper for that. You've got these, is this Abralon?
Yeah.
Okay. Abralon, it's the abrasive is glued to the foam rubber pad, and you'll see Ed use these a lot. These are really handy. You'll have these in a stack, and you put them under here. That gives you a lot of softness for a contour. It'll keep from burning your fingers if you get heavy-handed with your sanding. These things are really nice.
And they go up to 4,000 grit.
Yeah, right there, 4,000. Okay, you've got here at Woodcraft, they sell this PSA, the self-adhesive stuff. I use this with dowel rods. I use this piece of dowel. I'll tear off a piece of this or cut off a piece and wrap it around here, and then I can get inside, oh, maybe these small pieces or up underneath the rim. These are just, and then you tear the stuff off and throw it away. This one I needed a rounded piece to get down inside one of these small hollow forms. So I rounded the end of the dowel, glued this on with super glue, and then this will be thrown away or turned off. Dremel tool, everybody's used a Dremel tool. You got these little pieces. Hemostats that Keith was talking about. Now, this is one of the most dangerous things you've got in your entire toolkit. The tendency is to hold them like a doctor or a nurse does. Imagine what happens if I'm using this and I'm sanding the inside and that got caught. What's that going to do to my fingers when it goes around? All right, my fingers are going to go with it. My wrist is going to stay somewhere fairly normal. So if you're using hemostats, you hold them like this and sand on the inside. You never put your fingers through the holes. You do it like this or between your fingertips. But these will get up underneath the rim very quickly, very easily to give a highly concentrated, focused sanding pattern for you. Get a lot of tough spots. Bruce was also the inventor of the sanding glove, hence the name of his company, sandingglove.com. These things are marvelous for sanding on a stationary object. They are not designed to sand a rotating piece. Because you're wearing a glove, if something gets caught, it's going to break your hand, break your fingers. So all the disclaimers on Bruce's website is don't use this while it's spinning. I'll leave it up to your imagination whether or not I do that, but I'm not going to admit it if I did. But these things are great. And you can watch Bruce's wife take this and she'll show you how hard it is to sand like that. Then you take it and put it on the back of your hands. You sand like that and you don't get nearly as tired. So if you guys have a big piece you have to sand by hand, get one of these sanding gloves and do it on the back of the fingers and sand like this. And you can sand a whole lot longer. I know you don't need to, but you could if you had to. Okay. Pretty cool. Then you can get into the toys. Fordham, I want this from Bruce. Bruce, I'm one of his best friends now. Bruce Hoover, by the way, it's sanding glove. Bruce and Janet, his wife. This is one of the newest attachments for the Fordham, and it's got this, all kinds of accessories will go here. You can use it for carving or sanding. This is really neat for taking off really rough spots to get the nib off the bottom. You take it out of your chuck. I didn't buy this from, yeah, I did too. Pneumatic. Now this thing is an Orbital Sander.
You're one of my best customers.
Yeah. Orbital Sander, if you got a really high volume air compressor, don't do it with a pancake, it won't work. You got to have lots of air, so you probably need one of the piston type air compressors. But this will put a random sanding pattern on here and it'll cut like crazy. These things are really handy to have. Steel wool, don't go buy regular homeowners type steel wool that's got oil in it. Get the furniture type or the woodworker steel wool. There's no oil in here to stain your woods. Sanding sticks. You can see how much I use these. They're still in the original package. But if you're doing a lot of spindle turning and you have a lot of beads and coves and delicate work, these are really good for getting down at the base of the beads.
And for carving.
And for carving. Well, for hand carving, there's all kinds of great stuff that you can use it for. And they come in different grits, and the different colors indicate what grit you want. Micro mesh. This stuff was invented for the car business. This goes in grits. Now, it's not the same grit methodology as sandpaper is. That's 1500 grit. That's the coarsest they make. But if you're sanding plastics or lacquer finishes and you want to get a mirror shine, you need some of this micro mesh, and it goes all the way up to what they call 12,000 grit. And I use it on all my plastic pins or super glue finishes. And it comes with a little pad that will either absorb the heat from the friction or it'll help smooth out the rough spots by having the glass on it.
And Bob, I use that pad with regular sandpaper or something like that.
You can.
This is all work.
You can. All right, side angle grinders. Bruce sold me this piece 3 years ago. And that's a Sioux, and Sioux is a name brand, national name brand, high quality, really great stuff for $100 and something. Next time I saw him, he had these for $39. And I've used this one more than I've used this one, and it shows no signs of slowing down. So you don't need to buy a $119 Sioux side angle grinder to use for sanding. I use them both. I keep one for 2 and one for 3. You can use a Harbor Freight if you want to on these. But the biggest thing is you got to keep the dust blowing out of here because they'll all burn up the bushings if you let, because the dust will build up in here very quickly. You got to use your air compressor to blow the dust out of here every day, no matter whose you use. If you've got one of these, of course it's better with a plug-in type. That's what I started with. And the beast. Guess who I bought this from?
Ernie.
He wishes. If Ernie got a commission off of me, he would have been driving a totally different car when he drove up here today.
Maybe something older than a 94 Dodge?
It would have a lot more doors in it, I guarantee you that.
Oh, okay.
So this, get the tape off. I'm going to try to use it. All right, so this has a adjustable collet on the end that you put your sanding device, whatever that happens to be, and it's adjustable. Tape. Now this is the only thing I told Bruce I didn't like, is this little adapter inside falls out all the time and the whole thing falls apart. He
Are you
said,
talking about the adapter for the collar?
yeah, he said, well, if you buy the new one, you don't have to. I told him I'm going to come to you for a loan and do that.
As a design change, you know?
Yeah, no. This is an adapter piece that fits inside here and holds this. If your drill, like this one, the Sioux, the first one he sold me, did not fit inside this hole, so you had to use this adapter to hook these two things together. Now this one fits, I don't have to worry about it. But what this will do is if you do really, really deep hollow forms, it's got you covered. I don't know if I'm man enough to do one that deep, but trust me, I tried one time, and it won, and I didn't. So, but it is stout, and they are well made, and they do run true. This end doesn't wobble, doesn't rotate, so it's a good investment if you're going to go really deep hollow forms. Nothing this size. So that's the toys. I'm sure there are other stuff. And to stabilize this piece, this is rubber chucking. They came to the Florida Woodturning Symposium the first time this year. This fits if you have a one-way life center. On the tailstock, you know you can take the cone, the pointed cone off. And you got the coarse threads on the end. This is designed to screw right on there, and then it fits here in your life center, and that helps center this piece and stabilize it while you're sanding the outside, or if you're doing a second turning. I first saw them, I thought, nah, another gimmick, so of course I have to buy it, and I like it. All right, so let's do a little sanding.
Bob,
Sir,
could we back up a little bit? Because you said, or at least I heard, that the tools that you use in the beginning are to control the grit you need to start in. So what type of tools can we use in a deep hollow form that is going to give us
on the inside?
On the inside, correct.
There's no one answer. These will do it, but they're not very good if you have a really steep.
I think you meant
Collar?
more tuning
I was
tools.
thinking of cutting or scraping.
Before-
I'm using a little shear scraper. That's about
Okay.
the best I can.
Well, I wasn't going to talk about turning. I wasn't going to talk about hollowing because that'll take us off on a whole other tangent and a whole other set of toys.
Okay.
And, you know, my truck was full. I've got the captive bar, and that's what I use the most. I use Lyle Jamieson's.
But do you end with a scraper or the cutter tip before you go to sand?
Again, it depends on the wood.
Yeah.
Camphor has a lot of bad habit to tear on the inside. The little 1/4-inch cutter tip does not leave a good surface on the inside. John Jordan, when he does his, he doesn't use any kind of scraper. He uses the cutter tool. So does,
Sand either.
huh?
He doesn't sand
No,
either.
he doesn't. He just doesn't care about it. But he can leave a good enough finish on the inside that he wouldn't have to worry about it. I've got teardrop scraper tips that will go on the end of those boring bars. I've got the John Jordan armband, arm brace type, and I put a cutter tip, a teardrop scraper on those. For the smaller pieces, Benfo sold me one made by a guy who doesn't make them anymore. It's handheld with a teardrop tip, and there's no handle, no nothing. It's just a bar, and it gives you this light, delicate touch for thin wall turning. So different tools for different situations and for different woods.
Okay.
All right? And now on the inside, it's really important to rotate, spin the other way, because when you're sanding on the inside where you couldn't do as good a tool work as you can on the outside, you got a lot of these little fibers that are getting rolled over with the sandpaper, if you go back the other way, it'll straighten those fibers up and shear them off. So if you can turn the other way, now that's one time where you might rotate with the same grit of sandpaper. You cut the fibers off this way, rotate, cut them off then, but only the first couple of grits. And then I would swap every time I change grits.